Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 12th of March. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks for joining us on this beautiful spring day in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at the headlines. South Korea, China and Japan have vowed to advance their trilateral cooperation as they prepare for a foreign ministers meeting in Seoul later this month. The nominee to be South Korea's next unification minister says he will push for substantive dialogue with North Korea and look into the possibility of sending a special envoy to Pyongyang if it can boost ties. Plus, Iraqi forces sweep into the Islamic State-held city of Tikrit, launching a double-pronged offensive to squeeze the extremists out of that city. Our top story this morning, senior diplomats from South Korea, China and Japan met in Seoul on Wednesday to lay the groundwork for a trilateral foreign ministers meeting that will be held in the Korean capital next weekend. Our Hwang Sang-hee starts us off.
Tangled in historical and territorial disputes, senior officials from Korea, China and Japan met in Seoul on Wednesday in an effort to revive cooperation. Their second meeting in 6 months has added importance since it comes ahead of the first trilateral foreign ministers meeting since 2012.
We have come to agree to host the foreign ministers meeting this month and convened here under the clear purpose of preparing for the meeting.
Korea, as the current rotating chair, has been pushing for a gathering of the top diplomats since late last year. The three-way talks had been stalled mainly due to the territorial row between Japan and China over the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea, known in China as Diaoyu. Despite the challenges, Japanese Deputy Foreign Minister Shinsuke Sugiyama expressed hope for the ministerial meeting to lead to a summit.
In a better position to prepare for the upcoming foreign ministerial trilateral to be held sometime latter half of this month, and hopefully to be followed up further by the highest level of us three.
Taking a more cautious stance, the Chinese chief delegate refrained from mentioning such possibility, but acknowledged the importance of the upcoming meeting.
And this progress has not come easily and should be cherished.
But there is little hope that the ministerial meeting will actually break the ice between the three neighbors. An official at Seoul's foreign ministry said the top diplomats will strictly be discussing their trilateral cooperation, leaving out the more sensitive historical and territorial issues. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Now, there's a good chance U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter and Secretary of State John Kerry will pay a visit to South Korea next month. According to Korea-based Yonhap news agency on Wednesday, both Carter and Kerry are planning to visit Seoul and Japan as part of their Northeast Asia trip. Now, their trip comes ahead of President Park Geunhye and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visits to Washington, which will happen later this year. The report cited diplomatic sources as saying that during his visit to Seoul, Carter will most likely talk about continuing South Korea-US cooperation to deter North Korean nuclear threats. Eyes are also on whether he will talk about where the US stands on the issue of deploying an advanced missile defense system known as THAAD to South Korea. And US Secretary of State Kerry is also expected to discuss pending issues concerning both Seoul and Washington while he's here. And on a similar topic, Korea's presidential office has reiterated its position that no decision can be made about the deployment of that US missile defense system to South Korea, THAAD, because there has been no official request from Washington. Experts say the presidential office will likely keep to this stance because talking about it publicly could affect Korea's relations with the US and also China. Beijing has raised concerns about the possible deployment, saying it's a threat to its national security. This follows reports Washington is mulling over whether to send a missile defense system called THAAD to South Korea to counter ballistic missile threats from the north. A senior US Army officer says multilateral dialogue is the key to keeping an unpredictable North Korea in check and preventing any military miscalculations. Now, these remarks follow military talks between the US and China, where Beijing officials are usually reluctant to talk about North Korea issues. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The U.S. Army Pacific Commander General Vincent Brooks says North Korea came up in his discussions with Chinese military leaders during his recent visit to China. In an interview with the Brookings Institution's Order from Chaos blog on Tuesday, Brooks said he visited Beijing and Hainan last month and had meetings with China's top generals, but he did not elaborate on what the two sides said about North Korea. However, he did emphasize the need for dialogue between the U.S., China, South Korea, and Japan to formulate a coordinated policy to counter the North Korean nuclear and missile threat. Brooks said the regime's continual provocations and lack of transparency means there's always the potential for a military miscalculation. He added that, given North Korea's unpredictable nature, the Pacific Command remains on a so-called fight tonight posture, and stressed that U.S. troops in South Korea are always on alert. In regards to the U.S. generals meeting in China, diplomatic sources in Washington say it's unlikely much progress was made on North Korean issues. They note that, in previous encounters, China has been reluctant to talk to the U.S. about North Korea, especially in regards to the North's leadership and internal changes inside the isolated regime. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
The nominee to be South Korea's next unification minister says he believes there will be more opportunities to improve inter-Korean relations once the ongoing joint South Korea-US military drills wrap up in April. During his confirmation hearing on Wednesday, Hong Yong-pyo said he plans to push for dialogue with North Korea to address pending issues and improve relations. He added that sending a special envoy to Pyongyang could be one of several options to making that happen. However, when asked about the possibility of lifting the so-called May 24th sanctions on the North, the nominee said that could only happen if Pyongyang assumed responsibility for the deadly torpedo attack on a South Korean warship in 2010. These sanctions cut off virtually all inter-Korean trade and exchanges except those involved in the joint Kaesong industrial complex. President Park Geun-hye is scheduled to hold a three-way meeting with the leaders of Korea's ruling and opposition parties next Tuesday. The president is expected to talk about the achievements from her recent Middle East trip and seek the party's cooperation in her efforts to revitalize the economy and carry out social reforms. Now, just before departing for the Middle East, President Park said she would meet the two leaders upon her return. It will be the first time for the president to sit down with the leaders of both parties since her presidential election rival Moon Jae-in was elected the opposition party leader last month. Several countries have requested the Korean police boost protection for their diplomatic delegations following last week's appalling knife attack on the US ambassador to Korea, Mark Lippert. Korea's police chief, Kang Shin-myung, made the announcement at a government ruling party meeting on Wednesday and added that extra protection will be provided to them. Now, security guards will be deployed even without prior request if circumstances are deemed dangerous. The police chief added that officers are now providing around-the-clock security to Ambassador Lippert and his wife. Security guards have also been sent to protect the Japanese ambassador.
Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. Now we have some news just coming in. Korea's central bank has cut its key interest rate again by 0.25 percentage point to 1.75% this month. This leaves the key rate at a historic low and follows two rate cuts in the second half of last year. And we'll bring you details on this in our next newscast at noon Korea time. Now, the Korean won has been depreciating against the US dollar on expectations, the Bank of Korea would cut its key interest rate, as it has done, in an attempt to boost the sluggish economy. In fact, the Korean currency depreciated faster than any other Asian currency this month. In the 8 trading days up until this Wednesday, the won rose nearly 2.5% against the US dollar to around 1,131. Over the same period, the Japanese yen and the Malaysian ringgit rose about 2%, the Singaporean dollar just over 1.5%, while other Asian currencies rose less than 1%. The Seoul-based Daeshin Economic Research Institute expects the won-dollar exchange rate to depreciate even further and reach 1,151 within the next 2 months. This on expectations the US Federal Reserve will raise interest rates in the US in the coming months. Now, Korea is making moves to expand the nation's food export items to the global halal market following President Park's recent visit to the Middle East. To help local food firms comply with Muslim dietary laws, Korea has set up a new R&D agency solely devoted to this task. Our Park Ji-won reports.
The world's Muslim faithfuls follow certain food restrictions. For example, they don't consume pork of any form, alcohol, and animals that are not properly slaughtered under Islamic law. Permissible food is labeled halal, as halal means allowed in Arabic. And in an effort to expand the nation's food export items to the global halal market, a new halal food agency began operations on Thursday under the Korea Food Research Institute. The agency will focus on analyzing halal food standards in diverse Muslim countries like the United Arab Emirates and Indonesia, and provide the nation's food manufacturers with guidelines on how to produce and develop halal-certified foods. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs says the establishment of the Halal Food Agency is a follow-up measure of a recent MOU between Korea and the United Arab Emirates to promote cooperation in halal foods. The Agriculture Ministry hopes the MOU and the newly launched Halal Food Agency could help domestic food exporters make easier inroads into the global food market by targeting some 1.8 billion Muslims. The worldwide halal food market is estimated to be around 20% of the global food market. And since the late 2000s, many domestic food manufacturers like Nongshim and Pulmuwon have exported some of its food items, such as instant noodles and snacks that earned halal certifications. Korea aims to double the nation's halal foods exports from some $680 million last year to over $1.2 billion by 2017. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, if you've been unable to download media from iTunes or Apple's App Store, don't worry, because you weren't alone. Apple has confirmed intermittent outages of its popular music purchasing site, saying that both iTunes and App Store were unavailable for all users. Apple's system status page also said that there were problems with iCloud sign-ins and iCloud Mail in the hours before that, citing the error to an internal DNS error at Apple. The unusually extensive outage left users locked out for more than 8 hours in some cases, costing the company millions of dollars in lost sales. Now, one day after Iraqi forces began their assault into Tikrit, they've made some crucial gains as they push through into the city centre. For more on this and other global headlines we're following this hour, we connect to Eunice Kim at the News Centre. So, Eunice, we understand the Iraqi forces have gained control over a number of landmarks in Tikrit.
That's right, Mark. One of the first conquests within Tikrit we had heard about was the city's military hospital, which Iraqi military forces and militia had taken as they entered the city from the north. Since then, we are hearing they've also taken up positions at the city's traffic police headquarters, as forces that entered from the south planted Iraqi flags at 3 palaces that were built by the late dictator Saddam Hussein. Soldiers dealt with snipers top structures rigged with explosives, but sources say street-to-street fighting was not as intense as anticipated. Some have indicated that many IS fighters had earlier escaped the city dressed up as civilians. Meanwhile, further south, in an apparent retaliatory move, IS militants launched a fierce assault in the city of Ramadi, capital of Anbar province, blowing up at least 21 cars near army and security positions. Pro-IS Twitter accounts identified one of the suicide bombers as an Australian teen. We have not received confirmation of that from the Australian government.
And Eunice, in the latest IS propaganda video purportedly showing the murder of an Israeli Arab captive, reports say that both the adult and the boy militants have been identified as French nationals.
Yeah, that's right. That's according to an unnamed official cited by the Associated Press. And that man in the video spoke with a southern French accent. According to the source, authorities are said to be looking into the possibility that he is the half-brother of a French jihadist gunman by the name of Mohamed Merah. He is the militant who had shot dead 7 people in a 2012 strike in southern France. Now, about 1,400 people are estimated to have left France to join extremists in Syria and Iraq. That's including entire families. And French Prime Minister Manuel Valls on Sunday had said nearly 90 French citizens are known to have died in the fight there.
And turning over to Russia now, a Human Rights Council member is speaking out, saying that one of the suspects jailed for the murder of famous opposition politician Boris Nemtsov appeared to have been tortured into a confession.
Right. He suspects Zaur Dadayev had confessed to being involved in Nemtsov's murder under duress. That's Andrei Babushkin. He had visited the former decorated Chechen police officer in prison, and he said he spotted wounds on the man's body that he said had showed Dadayev had been tortured with electricity. Now, he urged someone outside of the ongoing investigations to look into this case further. Amnesty International has responded, saying the allegations raise very serious questions about the fairness of the proceedings, while Russia's investigative committee accused the Human Rights Council member of meddling and also threatened to investigate. Mark.
Yes, the mystery deepens with that case. Well, as always, Eunice, thank you ever so much for your reporting, and we'll see you back at noon.
See you then.
Korea's zeal for education is known around the world, but that exuberance has put a tremendous amount of pressure on kids here. Despite this, many Korean children say they feel physically healthy, but experts worry about the long-term consequences of such mental strain. Our Connie Kim reports.
Korea is well known for its high education fever, but its school children feel highly pressured to succeed in the academic world. A report by the Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs measuring Korean children's academic stress shows more than 50% of children in a 2013 survey scored a 3 or higher out of 4 on the academic stress index, higher than the global average. The index accounts for elements such as children's preschool enrollment and academic achievements. While stress typically takes a toll on a person's health, the report says this isn't the case for Korean children. When asked about their health, an overwhelming 97% of the children surveyed said they believe they're in good or average physical health. The research conductor says these seemingly contradictory results reflect the unique Korean characteristic of enduring hardship and the high priority on education.
In Korea, admission to a prestigious university is considered an important milestone. I believe this widespread perception partly shapes students' ability to endure stress and feel physically fine.
Psychologists, however, worry that children do not feel the need to relieve stress. That, if left unchecked, could lead to various side effects, such as violent behavior or addiction.
There are generally two ways of relieving stress, calming yourself down or letting it out. For children, it's important that parents acknowledge their stress levels and help them let it out.
Writing in a journal or taking the time to enjoy a hobby are recommended outlets. But psychologists say these are just a band-aid on the problem. What's more important, they say, is for Korean society to reflect on its values. Whether that's loading kids with homework for academic success or raising kids that are both physically and mentally healthy. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the Korean national football team as manager Uli Stilicke held the year's first technical seminar on Wednesday to break down the 2015 Asian Cup in Australia. Now, using just 6 sentences, he broke down each match that the national team played in, including the final match against Australia, where he stated that the team that made more mistakes on the pitch lost the match, and that was Korea. Now, he added that they should be happy with their second-place finish in Australia, but try to improve their weaknesses through their experiences. Meanwhile, he also explained why he chose the previously unknown Lee Jung-hyup, saying that his movement in penetrating the defense was his reason. Now, one of the reasons why two-time Olympic speed skating gold medalist Lee Sang-hwa shut down her season early was because of fatigue, but apparently she's not the only one. It's the entire Korean speed skating team. Now, with the ISU World Cup final set to start on the 21st of this month, the Korea Skating Union stated that none of the Korean speed skaters will participate in that event due to fatigue. Now, it's the first time that the entire team has decided not to participate in the final despite earning their tickets. Meanwhile, Lee Seung-hoon will still win the overall men's mass start gold despite his lack of participation. And now finishing things off with the 2014-2015 KBL Playoffs, where the Incheon Itilan Elephants took on the Seoul SK Knights in Game 2 of the Best-of-5 series on Wednesday, hoping to get a nice 2-0 series lead. But what do you know, SK Knights, even without Aaron Hayes due to an ankle injury, take an early 25-20 lead after the first quarter, but Incheon rallies in the second quarter, take a 43-37 lead going to halftime. But a big third quarter for SK, outscoring Itilan 21-10 to take the lead back. But check this out. Fourth quarter of the game with SK up by just 8 seconds left on the clock. Ricardo Powell, that's a Kim Yeon-ah spin and the eventual game winner as Incheon takes a 2-0 series lead with a 76-75 victory. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, the dry weather continues to grip the nation with dry weather advisory in place across much of the country, including here in the capital. So drink plenty of water, as 8 glasses of water is recommended in a day, and apply a good amount of lotion to stay moisturized. Now, the most parts have a freezing morning, but we can notice the readings getting up rapidly. And right now, the current reading stands at 0 here in the capital and 2 in Daegu. And later on, it will peak at similar to a tad higher than yesterday, as the daytime high here in the capital will rise to 7. Daegu and Gwangju will peak at 13, and Busan will rise to 12 this afternoon. And let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon should see a high of 12 and 11, and Dokdo peaks at 4. Now, temperatures are on the rise and will have big jump in temperatures next week, so hang in there for a couple more days. Spring is really right around the corner. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now. Plenty more stories are online, and it's also worth checking out our smartphone application for all the latest news and programs that we offer here on ARIRANG TV. We'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. So until then, goodbye.